I never thought I'd stand here again, my trembling fingers touching the rusted padlock on the gate that had haunted my dreams for 30 years. The wind whispered through the tall prairie grass, carrying memories I'd spent decades trying to bury. Just take pictures for the real estate listing, sign the papers next week, and it's over, Michael had said, his voice carrying that familiar tone, the one that treated me like I was fragile crystal, ready to shatter. The same tone everyone used since James died 6 months ago. But they didn't understand. None of my 3 children understood what this place did to me. How could they? They were too young when it happened. When Benjamin, my firstborn, my golden boy, I couldn't even complete the thought, even after all these years. The mining company's offer is more than fair, Mom. $20 million. Think of what we could do with that, Jennifer had insisted just yesterday, her lawyer husband nodding beside her. Dad would want this for us. But would he? In our 30 years of marriage after we left this place, James mentioned the ranch so rarely that sometimes I wondered if he'd erased it from his memory as thoroughly as I'd tried to. Except for those trips, 3 times a year, like clockwork. Fishing trips, medical conferences, reunions with old friends, different excuses, always the same strange quietness when he returned. I pushed against the gate, expecting resistance from 3 decades of abandonment, but it swung open with surprising ease. The rusted chain and padlock had been purely decorative. My heart quickened. The dirt road ahead wasn't overgrown as it should have been. It was maintained, recently graded, with fresh tire tracks. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small against the vastness of the Montana sky. "Is someone there?" No answer came, but as I walked the half-mile road toward where our house had stood, I noticed other discrepancies. The fences were repaired. A new windmill turned lazily on the hill. In the distance I could see buildings, new ones, not just our old farmhouse. I almost turned back then, called Michael or David, but something pulled me forward. Perhaps James's voice in my head, saying what he always said when I was afraid. "The only way out is through, Ellie girl." As I crested the final hill, I stopped dead. Below me spread not the abandoned ghost of a ranch I expected, but a thriving community. The original farmhouse stood freshly painted. Beside it, a dozen small cabins formed a semicircle. A large barn gleamed red in the afternoon sun. A greenhouse caught the light. And people. There were people everywhere. A group of men repaired a tractor. Children played in a fenced playground. Someone was hanging laundry. And horses, at least 20 horses, grazed in a corral that hadn't existed before. I must have made a sound because a woman looked up. Middle-aged, with salt and pepper hair tied back in a practical ponytail, she shielded her eyes against the sun. When she saw me, she froze for an instant, then quickly spoke to a teenager beside her who ran toward the main house. I couldn't move as she approached. Who was this woman on my land? What was all this? Had James sold the property without telling me? "Mrs. Mitchell?" the woman called as she got closer. She knew my name. "Eleanor Mitchell?" "Yes," I managed, my voice thin. "Who are you? What is this place?" She stopped a respectful distance away, her eyes, kind but cautious, studying my face. "My name is Margaret Santos. Everyone calls me Maggie. I've been waiting for you to come." "Waiting? I don't understand. This ranch has been abandoned for 30 years. A sad smile touched her lips. "No, Mrs. Mitchell. This ranch has never been abandoned, not for a single day since you left." My knees weakened. I reached out to steady myself against a fence post. "That's impossible. We moved to Denver after Benjamin, after the accident. James never." "Your husband came back the very next month," she said gently. "And every month after that, for 30 years, until his heart gave out." The world tilted sideways. James? My James had been coming here monthly? Not 3 times a year, but 12 or more? All those fishing trips, conferences, weekends with old college friends? "You're lying," I whispered, though something deep inside recognized the truth in her words. "I wish I were, for your sake. I know this must be a shock." She gestured toward the house. "Would you like to come inside? There's someone who's been especially looking forward to meeting you." As if on cue, a man with Down syndrome hurried from the main house. About 35, with James's fishing hat perched precariously on his head, his face lit up when he saw me. "Ben's mommy?" he called out, waving enthusiastically. "Ben's mommy came." The name hit me like a physical blow. Ben. No one had called my son that, But James, everyone else used his full name, Benjamin. Thomas, honey, remember what we talked about? Maggie said gently. This is Mrs. Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell, he repeated dutifully, approaching with his hand extended formally. I'm Thomas. I help with the horses and the garden. Mr. James was my best friend. I took his hand automatically, my mind still reeling. Nice to meet you, Thomas. Would you like to see Ben's special place? He asked innocently. I put fresh flowers there every Tuesday. Mr. James said flowers make Ben happy in heaven. I couldn't breathe. Ben's special place? Flowers? I looked at Maggie, silently pleading for explanation. James built a memorial, she said softly, by the lake, where my 10-year-old son had slipped beneath the surface while I prepared his birthday lunch, unaware until it was too late, the place that had destroyed me. I can't, I whispered, backing away. I need to go. But Thomas took my hand in his warm one. Don't be scared, Mrs. Mitchell. The lake is friendly now. It teaches children to swim so they don't go to heaven too early like Ben did. Before I could process his words, I heard an engine. A black SUV approached, kicking up dust. Michael had followed me after all. Mom! He called, climbing out. What the hell is going on here? Who are these people? As Maggie turned toward my eldest surviving son, her expression changed subtly. Your father's legacy, she said simply. And you must be Michael. He spoke of you often. My son's face darkened as he looked around. This place was supposed to be abandoned. Who gave you permission to be here? Thomas stepped slightly behind me, suddenly nervous. Your father did, Maggie replied, her voice firm. For the past 30 years. That's impossible, Michael snapped, stepping protectively between me and this stranger, claiming to know so much about my husband. My father never mentioned any of this. Because he promised your mother he wouldn't, Maggie replied with a calmness that somehow made her words more devastating. He kept 2 promises his entire life, to never leave those in need and to never hurt Eleanor with memories of this place. I found my voice, though it sounded distant to my own ears. You said you've been waiting for me. How did you know I'd come? Maggie's eyes softened. James knew you would. Eventually, after he was gone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a keyring. He left instructions. There are things he wanted you to see. When you were ready, Michael stepped forward. We're not here for some mysterious treasure hunt. This property is being sold. These people need to be evicted immediately. I watched several of the people in the distance turn toward us, anxiety visible even from afar. A woman clutched her child closer. Michael, please, I said, finding unexpected steadiness. Let's at least understand what's happening here. What's happening is trespassing, Mom. We need to call the sheriff. Thomas, still half hidden behind me, spoke up. Mr. James said we could stay forever. He promised. Michael's face reddened. My father has been dead for 6 months, and he didn't own this place alone. My mother owns it jointly, yes, Maggie interrupted, her tone businesslike now. Which is why we've been waiting. James knew this day would come. A young woman approached, carrying a toddler on her hip, military posture, wary eyes. Everything okay, Maggie? Fine, Jessie, Maggie assured her. This is Mrs. Mitchell and her son. They're just visiting. Jessie relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained vigilant. Should I tell the others? Not yet. Let's give Mrs. Mitchell some time first. I studied the young woman. Barely more than a girl, really. 22, perhaps. The child on her hip had her eyes. You live here? I asked her directly. She nodded. 2 years now. Since Rick, she swallowed hard. My husband. Afghanistan. The VA wasn't... Her words trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Michael's jaw clenched, but even he seemed to recognize that ordering a military widow off the property wouldn't play well, even to himself. Mom, we should discuss this privately, he said tersely. Yes, Maggie agreed. Mrs. Mitchell, perhaps you'd like to see the house. Your house. My house. The farmhouse where I'd spent 10 happy years before that terrible day. Where I'd brought all my babies home from the hospital. Where I'd watched Benjamin take his first steps on the wide front porch. I'll come with you, Michael insisted. Actually, I surprised myself by saying, I'd like a few minutes alone. With Maggie. His eyebrows shot up. Mom, we don't know who these people are. I believe we do, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. They're people James knew. That's enough for now. I could see him calculating whether to push back, but 30 years as my son had taught him to recognize when I'd made up my mind. Fine. 30 minutes. Then we're calling our lawyer. An hour, I countered. I hadn't negotiated with my children since they were teenagers. It felt oddly empowering. As Michael reluctantly retreated to his car, I followed Maggie toward the house, Thomas trailing happily behind us. Each step up the familiar porch sent memories washing over me. Rocking babies during summer thunderstorms, James replacing warped boards, Benjamin's height marks penciled on the doorframe. James kept everything as close to original as possible, Maggie said, opening the door. Structurally, at least, the layout was the same. Wide entryway, opening to a living room on the right, kitchen straight ahead, staircase to the left, but the furnishings were different. The living room held 3 desks with computers, filing cabinets lined one wall. A large whiteboard displayed a duty roster, meal schedule, and medical appointments. This is our office now, Maggie explained. We had to repurpose some spaces as we grew. How many people live here? I managed to ask. Currently 47. 18 veterans, 8 women from domestic situations with 11 children between them, Thomas and his mother Rose, and a family of 6 from Afghanistan. 47, I echoed. And James knew them all? He knew everyone who ever stayed here. Even the temporary ones, especially them. She led me toward the kitchen, now industrial-sized with 2 large stoves and an enormous refrigerator. We serve 3 meals a day, plus snacks for the children. How? I asked simply. How is this funded? Maggie's eyes met mine. James, that's not possible. We weren't wealthy. James was a family doctor, not some secret millionaire. The land, she said simply. Parts of it, at least. The kitchen table, not my old pine one, but a huge metal work table, held stacks of children's drawings. One caught my eye, stick figures around a blue circle, the words Ben's Water scrawled above in a child's handwriting. What is Ben's Water? I asked, my throat tightening. Maggie exchanged a look with Thomas, who had been unusually quiet. The swimming place, Thomas said, brightening, where children learn not to drown. I put flowers there every Tuesday because that's when Ben went to heaven. The room swayed. Maggie quickly pulled out a chair. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell. We should have waited before— Show me, I interrupted. Show me everything. Maggie nodded slowly. First, there's something you need to see upstairs. She led me up the familiar creaking staircase to what had been our bedroom. Now it was clearly Maggie's sparse, tidy living quarters. She crossed to a bookshelf and removed a wooden box. James left this for you. He made me promise to give it to you first, before showing you anything else. The box was hand-carved, with Ellie inlaid in mother of pearl. James had always worked with his hands to relieve stress. I'd never seen this box before. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside lay an envelope with my name, and dozens, no hundreds, of sealed letters beneath it, each dated meticulously. 30 years of letters, never sent. The envelope contained a single page in James's distinctive handwriting. My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, 2 things have happened. I've left this world, and you've found your way back to the ranch. I've played this moment in my mind thousands of times, wondering which would come first, my courage to tell you the truth, or my death. It seems death won that race. I've kept secrets from you, my love. Not affairs or hidden vices, but a different life. One I built alongside our life in Denver, a life where Benjamin's memory serves as foundation rather than wound. I couldn't sell this land after we lost him, couldn't bear the thought of strangers living where his laughter had filled every room, but neither could I leave it to decay. So I came back, first to grieve alone, then to rebuild, then to repurpose. What started with one homeless veteran seeking shelter in our barn has become something I never imagined, a community. I've written you a letter every month for 30 years, explaining everything. I never sent them because I feared reopening your wounds. Perhaps that was cowardice disguised as protection. Forgive me, Ellie girl, for my secrets, for my silence, for leaving this burden to you. But please, before you decide the fate of this place, see what it has become. I've loved you completely, even in my duplicity. Always, James. I looked up at Maggie, tears streaming down my face. You knew? All this time? For 15 years, she said softly. Since James found me sleeping in a church after I left the convent. He brought me here, showed me what he'd built, and asked me to help run it. While I knew nothing, I whispered. Because he loved you too much to make you remember, she replied. The question now, Mrs. Mitchell, is whether you're ready to see what Benjamin's death helped create. Through my tears, I nodded. It was time to face the lake. The path to the lake hadn't changed, still a gentle slope through cottonwood trees that whispered in the wind. But I noticed new additions, benches placed strategically along the way, flower gardens in unlikely spots, and most surprising of all, safety signs with bright yellow lettering. James installed those after the first families with children came, Maggie explained, walking beside me. No child is ever allowed at the lake without an adult, not after Benjamin. I stopped, my hand pressed against the rough bark of a cottonwood. You speak his name so easily. Maggie paused. James spoke of him often. All the children here know Benjamin's story. I haven't said his name out loud in years, I admitted, the confession tearing from somewhere deep inside me. It hurts too much. I understand, she said simply, but she couldn't possibly understand. How could anyone comprehend what it's like to prepare your son's birthday cake, to peek out the window expecting to see him playing with his toy trucks, only to realize you haven't heard his voice for too long? To run frantically to the lake, screaming his name? To see a small body floating face down, so still, so terribly still. Mrs. Mitchell? Maggie's voice pulled me back. We can do this another day if... No, I said firmly. Now. We continued walking, and I noticed Thomas had disappeared. Where's Thomas? I asked. He always runs ahead to the memorial. It's his special responsibility. The trees thinned, and suddenly the lake stretched before us, smaller than in my nightmares, but no less menacing. Its surface glittered innocently in the afternoon sun. But my eyes were drawn to what hadn't been there before. A curved wooden deck extending over the water, with railings and steps leading into a roped-off swimming area. A small boathouse stood nearby, and at the water's edge, a stone memorial where Thomas was carefully arranging wildflowers. I approached slowly, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The memorial was simple, but beautiful. A granite stone set in a small garden, with a bronze plaque embedded in its face. It read, Benjamin James Mitchell, 1975, 1985. For every life saved here, his spirit soars higher. Below that was a second, smaller plaque. 47 children have learned to swim safely here. Not one has been lost. My knees gave way, and I sank onto the garden bench, tears blurring my vision. 47 children, I whispered. Maggie nodded. James started teaching swimming lessons 15 years ago. Every child who lives here must learn. He hired certified instructors, built the safe swimming area, installed rescue equipment. She hesitated before adding, Your grandson was one of them. My head snapped up. What? Jennifer's boy, Ethan. When he was 7, he came close to drowning at a friend's pool party. Jennifer mentioned it to James during a Sunday dinner, remember? Said they couldn't afford the private swim lessons the doctor recommended after the incident. I remembered. Jennifer had been distraught. James had listened quietly, then changed the subject. Typical James. Uncomfortable with family drama. James paid for Ethan's lessons anonymously. He drove 3 hours every Saturday for 6 weeks to secretly watch from his car as Ethan learned to swim at that fancy aquatic center in Boulder. I shook my head in disbelief. Jennifer never knew? No one knew, except me, because I had to reschedule the veterans woodworking class he usually taught those Saturdays. Maggie smiled sadly. That was James, solving problems from the shadows. Thomas approached, beaming with pride at his flower arrangement. Pretty for Ben, yes? Yellow was his favorite, Mr. James told me. Yellow had indeed been Benjamin's favorite color. His bedroom had been painted sunflower yellow. The detail made my breath catch. How many other memories of our son had James kept alive while I'd locked mine away? It's beautiful, Thomas, I managed. Want to see the special swimming place? I can swim now? Mr. James taught me. I'm not scared of the water anymore. Thomas pointed excitedly to the deck structure. Maggie touched his shoulder gently. Maybe later, Thomas. Mrs. Mitchell needs time. I stared at the lake, the place I'd demonized in my mind for 3 decades. The place where I'd lost everything. Except I hadn't lost everything. I'd lost Benjamin, a wound that would never heal, but I'd still had James, Michael, Jennifer, and David. I'd had a life in Denver, students who adored me, grandchildren who brought me joy. Meanwhile, James had been here, transforming our tragedy into something miraculous. While I'd been drowning in grief, he'd been teaching children to swim. Why didn't he tell me? I asked, not expecting an answer. but Maggie had one. The first year he came to grieve alone, found a homeless veteran sleeping in your barn, a man named Robert who'd served in Vietnam. James let him stay. Then another veteran came, and another. She sat beside me on the bench. 5 years in, there were 12 people living here. James wanted to tell you then. He drove all the way to Denver with photos, plans to show you how he was healing by helping others. What happened? He saw you laughing with friends outside a restaurant, said it was the first time he'd seen you truly happy since Benjamin died. Couldn't bear to reopen the wound. Drove back here and built the first cabin instead. Thomas wandered back toward the memorial, humming softly to himself. Each time James convinced himself you were ready, something would happen. A panic attack when someone mentioned Montana at a dinner party. Your refusal to let Benjamin's photographs be displayed. Your nightmares that still came every year on his birthday. I remembered those moments, those small glimpses of my continuing brokenness that I thought I'd hidden so well. 10 years ago, Maggie continued, when the ranch was thriving with over 30 residents, James finally wrote you a long letter explaining everything. He drove to Denver, determined to deliver it personally. What stopped him? He found you in Benjamin's room, the room you kept exactly as it was when he died. You were holding his teddy bear, crying. It was the anniversary. I remembered that day clearly. I'd thought I was alone, that James was at a medical conference in Chicago. I'd never known he'd seen me in my most private grief. After that, Maggie said, he created the trust, made legal arrangements for the ranch to continue without him, decided that his two worlds would remain separate until he died. I finished. She nodded. He loved you too much to break your heart twice. A small voice called from up the path. A little girl, perhaps 8 years old, with copper-red hair that caught the sunlight, the same shade Benjamin's had been. Miss Maggie, Mom says dinner needs checking. Be right there, Lucy, Maggie called back, then turned to me. James's last project. Lucy's father was a Marine, died in Iraq. Her mother couldn't afford housing. They came here 6 months before James passed. As if summoned by our conversation, a dozen more people appeared on the path, adults and children heading toward the lake for what was clearly a regular afternoon ritual. Maggie stood. It's swimming lesson time, every day at 4. Would you like to watch, or would you prefer to go back to the house? I stared at the lake, at Benjamin's memorial, at the safety measures James had installed, at the children approaching with towels and smiles. For 30 years, I'd run from this place. For 30 years, James had been transforming it. I'll stay, I said. I need to see. The swimming lesson was both beautiful and excruciating to watch. A certified instructor, a former Olympic hopeful named Carlos, who'd lost a leg in Afghanistan, Maggie explained, led 8 children through their paces in the roped-off swimming area. Their laughter echoed across the water, so at odds with my memories of this place. We teach the Franklin method, Maggie said as we watched from the shore. James researched every swimming program in the country before choosing it. Lowest drowning statistics of any technique. I noticed an older man stationed on the deck with a life ring and whistle, vigilantly watching every child. Another adult stood in a kayak just beyond the swimming area. No child was more than an arm's length from an instructor. 3-tiered safety system, Maggie explained, following my gaze. Instructor in water, spotter on deck, emergency responder on boat. Plus, all staff are CPR certified. Benjamin had died because there'd been no system, just a boy who'd slipped away while parents prepared his birthday surprise. One moment of inattention that shattered 3 lives. Thomas sat cross-legged by the memorial, occasionally waving at the swimmers. He seemed content in his self-appointed role as guardian of Benjamin's memory. When the lesson ended, the children trudged up the path, wrapped in towels and chattering excitedly. Lucy, the red-headed girl, paused before us. Did you see me, Miss Maggie? I can float on my back now. Carlos says I'm ready for level 3. That's wonderful, honey, Maggie replied with genuine pride. Lucy's curious eyes turned to me. Are you a new grandma here? My grandma's in heaven with my dad. Before I could respond, a young woman hurried over. Lucy, don't bother Mrs. Mitchell. She turned to me. I'm sorry. I'm Andrea, Lucy's mom. It's all right, I assured her. And yes, Lucy, I suppose I am new here. The child beamed. Will you watch me swim tomorrow too? I'm going to learn backward kicks. Something twisted in my heart. Pain, yes, but something else too. I'd like that, I heard myself say. As Andrea led Lucy away, Maggie touched my arm gently. "Let me show you the rest before Michael returns. There's much more to see." We walked back toward the house, taking a different path that led past the cabins I'd spotted earlier. Each small building housed 2 families or 4 single residents, Maggie explained. All built with timber from the property, designed by a veteran architect who'd found purpose in creating homes for others after losing his own family to a drunk driver. Beyond the residential area stood the greenhouse, a state-of-the-art hydroponic system that provided vegetables year-round. "James sold the north parcel last year," Maggie said. "The part with mineral rights? Used the money to expand our sustainability projects." I stopped walking. "He sold part of the ranch? For how much?" Maggie hesitated. $3 million. The figure staggered me. "What did he tell me about this money?" "I don't remember any large deposits. He didn't deposit it in your joint accounts. He created the Mitchell Ranch Trust and funded it with the proceeds for sustainability after he was gone. $3 million. Hidden from me, from our children. Spent on strangers while Michael struggled to pay for his oldest son's college tuition. While Jennifer worried about medical bills after her husband's layoff. While David battled the demons that kept him in and out of rehab. "Show me the documentation," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Everything." Maggie nodded, unsurprised by my reaction. "It's all in James's office." We returned to the main house, where she led me to a room off the main hallway, James's study. I'd forgotten our farmhouse even had this small room. We'd used it for storage during our years here. Now it was undeniably James's space. His medical reference books lined the shelves alongside tattered Louis L'Amour novels, his guilty pleasure. The desk was his grandfather's roll top that had once stood in our Denver home's basement. On the wall hung Benjamin's first-grade photo. I touched the frame gently. "He kept this here?" "He kept all the family photos here. Said it was his heart room." She crossed to the desk and unlocked the bottom drawer with a key from her pocket. "These are the trust documents, property records, and financial statements. And these," she placed a stack of leather-bound books beside the legal papers, "are his diaries. 30 years worth." I sank into James's chair, running my fingers over the topmost journal. The earliest one, dated the year after Benjamin died. "I'll give you privacy," Maggie said, moving toward the door. "But Michael will be back soon, demanding answers." "Let him wait," I replied, already opening the first journal with trembling hands. The entry was dated exactly 1 month after we'd moved to Denver. "Came back to the ranch today. Couldn't sell it. Couldn't bear strangers living where Ben's laughter once echoed. Found Johnson's for sale sign and tore it down. Told him by phone we've changed our minds. Ellie doesn't know. First secret I've ever kept from her in 15 years of marriage. But how do I tell her I need this place she cannot bear to remember? Slept in Ben's room. Found his toy soldier under the bed. Cried until sunrise. I flipped forward several pages. 3 months here now. Fixed the roof on the barn. Started clearing debris from the spring storm. Gives my hands something to do, while my heart still searches for answers. Ellie thinks I'm at a medical conference in Seattle. Hate lying to her. But she's sleeping through the night now in Denver. Making friends at her new school. Mentioning Ben without breaking down. My coming here would undo all that healing. And later, a year after Benjamin's death, found a man sleeping in the barn today. Robert Winters, Vietnam vet. No home, no family. Eyes like I've seen in the mirror. Haunted. Offered him dinner. He asked if he could stay and help with repairs in exchange for shelter. Said yes before I even thought about it. Feels right having another soul here. The ranch was never meant to be empty. 5 years later, 12 people living here now. Roberts brought others, all veterans, all homeless, good men fallen on hard times. We fixed up the bunkhouse, added a bathroom to the old tack room. They're healing the ranch, and it's healing them. Should tell Ellie, drove to Denver intending to. Saw her laughing with friends outside that Italian restaurant she loves. First real laughter I've seen since Ben. Couldn't bear to reopen the wound. Came back and started building a proper cabin instead. The men deserve real shelter. And 10 years after, met Margaret Santos today. Goes by Maggie, former nun who left her order after reporting abuse that the church tried to cover up. Found her sleeping in St. Michael's Church when I was in Billings for supplies. Something about her reminded me of Ellie. That same quiet strength. Offered her the teaching position for the children. We have 5 kids living here now, all with parents working through addiction or incarceration. Need someone with educational background. When she saw the ranch, what we've built, she cried. Said she'd found her true calling after all. Think I have too. With shaking hands, I flipped to the final journal. The entries from just last year. Doctor says my heart is failing. 6 months, maybe less. Haven't told Ellie. Can't bear to see the fear in her eyes. Need to use this time to secure the ranch's future. The trust is nearly ready. Maggie will take over completely. She practically runs everything already. Just need to ensure the funds will last. Sold the north parcel to Miller Mining. $3 million. Told Ellie I was at a cardiology conference in Houston. More lies to protect her. Used the money to build permanent housing for the veterans, install the solar system, upgrade the greenhouse, purchase medical equipment. The ranch will be self-sustaining now. My legacy to Ben, transforming the place of his death into a sanctuary of life. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before his sudden heart attack. Made video for Ellie today, out by Ben's memorial. Tried to explain everything. 47 children have learned to swim here now. 47 lives potentially saved. 1 for each year Ben would have lived if I'd watched him more carefully that day. My penance, my redemption. Hoping someday Ellie will understand why I kept this from her. Why I built this secret life. Not for lack of love, because of its abundance. The ranch is ready. I am ready. But I fear I'm leaving her with an impossible burden. The truth. I closed the journal as the sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside. Michael had returned, and he'd brought reinforcements. Jennifer's BMW and David's motorcycle now stood beside Michael's SUV. All 3 of my surviving children had arrived, ready to sell their brother's legacy out from under me. This is absurd, Michael's voice carried through the open window of the study. Squatters' rights aren't a thing anymore, especially when the actual owners are right here. I quickly wiped my tears, tucking James's journals into the desk drawer. My 3 children stood in the front yard, confronting Maggie, who maintained her characteristic calm. As I've explained, Mr. Mitchell, this property is held in trust. I'm simply the administrator, Maggie was saying as I stepped onto the porch. Your mother is the one you should be speaking with. 3 heads turned toward me. Jennifer rushed forward, her lawyer-honed instincts immediately assessing my red-rimmed eyes. Mom, what have these people been telling you? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. And they're not these people, Jennifer. They're residents of Mitchell Ranch. Mitchell Ranch hasn't existed for 30 years, Michael retorted. This is just land we own that apparently has been colonized by strangers. James's diary says otherwise, I replied. He's been coming here monthly since Benjamin died, building something extraordinary. Dad? David spoke for the first time, confusion evident in his face. He'd always been the sensitive one, so much like James in temperament. Dad was running this place all these years? Not running it, Maggie interjected quietly. Creating it, funding it, loving it, and lying about it, Michael snapped. If what you're saying is true, he lied to all of us for decades. A fair point, one that still stung despite the context I'd gleaned from James's journals. He did, I acknowledged, to protect me, to preserve Benjamin's memory. Ben has been gone 30 years, Jennifer said, her voice softening at my obvious distress. We all loved him, Mom. But this, she gestured around at the community bustling behind us. This is madness. Dad hiding millions of dollars of family assets to fund some personal charity project? $3 million to be exact, I said. From the sale of the north parcel last year. Michael's face darkened. $3 million? Are you kidding me? I asked Dad for help with Tyler's college tuition last spring. He said things were tight with retirement. And my medical bills after Greg's layoff, Jennifer added. He suggested I look into payment plans. I hadn't known these details. In our marriage, James had handled our finances, and I'd gladly let him. Now I wondered what else I might have missed. David, still silent, was watching the activity around the ranch. A group of veterans was returning from the fields, tools slung over their shoulders. Women gathered children for dinner. Thomas waved excitedly when he spotted us. I want to see everything, I declared. Before we discuss the future of this place, I need to understand what James built. Mom, the mining company representative is meeting us here tomorrow, Michael protested. $25 million, Mom. That's over $6 million each for us. Your grandchildren's college funds, your retirement security. One day, Michael. I'm asking for one day to learn the truth about your father's life. Something in my tone must have conveyed my determination, because Michael sighed in defeat. Fine. One day. Then we talk terms. Jennifer looked less convinced. I'm calling Greg. He should review these supposed trust documents. That's your right, I agreed. David, will you stay? My youngest nodded, still watching Thomas, who was now hurrying toward us, waving something in his hand. Mrs. Mitchell, I found Ben's picture. He thrust a framed photograph toward me, Benjamin on his 7th birthday, gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera as he proudly displayed his new fishing rod. James had taken the picture right here on this porch. Where did you get this? I whispered. Mr. James's special room. He showed me all the pictures, said I needed to know Ben because we would have been friends. Thomas's innocent expression clouded. These people are mad. Are they making you leave us? I felt my children tense beside me. Using someone with Down syndrome as an emotional prop would only strengthen Michael's resolve to clear the property. No one's leaving yet, Thomas, I assured him, accepting the photograph. We're just talking. Good, because you need to see the horses, and the school, and Robert's woodshop, and Rose makes the best apple pie on Thursdays. His excitement was palpable and completely genuine. David stepped forward, extending his hand to Thomas. I'd like to see the horses. I'm David, Mrs. Mitchell's son. Thomas's face lit up. Ben's brother. Mr. James said you were good with horses when you were little. A shadow crossed David's face. A glimpse of pain quickly masked. Did he? He said softly. Said you could whisper to them. Make the scared ones calm. Thomas took David's hand and began pulling him toward the stables. We have a new mare. She's scared of everything. Maybe you can help. David glanced back at me, something vulnerable and questioning in his eyes. Go, I encouraged him. I'd like to know what else your father said about you. As they walked away, Michael shook his head. Unbelievable. They've got plants everywhere, tugging at heartstrings. Mom, can't you see what's happening? They're manipulating you. Or perhaps your father left more of himself here than he did in Denver, I replied, surprising myself with the thought. I need to see it all, Michael. You can leave or stay, but I'm not signing anything tomorrow until I know exactly what I'd be destroying. Jennifer's phone rang. Her husband Greg, no doubt. She stepped away to answer, legal strategies already forming. Mom, be reasonable. Michael lowered his voice. Even if Dad did build this place, even if he did care about these people, they're strangers. We're his family. Are we? I challenged, clutching Benjamin's photograph. How much time did you spend with your father in the last year, Michael? How many times did you call just to talk, not to ask for something? The question struck home. Michael's jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, it isn't, I agreed. Just as it wasn't fair that your father kept this place secret from us, but I'm beginning to understand why. I turned to Maggie, who had been watching our family drama with respectful distance. Show me everything. Starting with how James funded this place before last year's mineral sale. Michael made a final attempt. The trust documents might not even be legal. Dad wasn't a lawyer. No, came a new voice from behind us. But I am. And they're ironclad. We turned to see an elderly man in a wheelchair approaching, pushed by a middle-aged woman. Robert Winters, he introduced himself, original resident and legal counsel for the Mitchell Ranch Trust since its inception 15 years ago. You're a lawyer? Michael asked incredulously. The old man's eyes crinkled with amusement. Vietnam before that. Harvard Law after. Alcoholism and PTSD in between. Your father found me sleeping in his barn and gave me purpose again. He held up a leather portfolio. Would you like to review the documents, young man? I'd be happy to walk you through the terms. Michael's confidence visibly faltered. Dinner's in 30 minutes, the woman pushing Robert's wheelchair announced. We'd be honored if the Mitchell family would join us. Grace is at 6 sharp. Maggie turned to me. Rose makes the meal assignments. She was the head chef at the Grand Hotel in Billings before her arthritis-forced retirement. Thomas's mother? I guessed. Maggie nodded. James found them living in their car 10 years ago. Thomas was having seizures. They couldn't afford his medication. I thought of Thomas's sunny disposition, his dedicated flower arrangements at Benjamin's memorial. How different his life might have been without James's intervention. We'll stay for dinner, I decided, looking pointedly at my children. All of us. Jennifer rejoined us, phone clutched tightly. Greg says we should document everything. Take photographs. That's a start, I agreed. To understand what your father valued enough to hide from us for 30 years. As we walked toward the dining hall, converted from our old barn, I noticed David in the distance, standing quietly beside a nervous mare, his hand gently stroking her neck while Thomas watched in awe. For the first time since James's death, I felt something shift inside me, a crack in the foundation of grief that had defined my existence. Not healing, not yet, but possibility. And in my hand, Benjamin smiled from his photograph, eternally 7 years old, forever frozen in time at the place I'd run from, and James had transformed. The dining hall stunned me. Our old barn, where we'd once stored hay and farm equipment, had been transformed into a warm, welcoming space, with long wooden tables, a stone fireplace, and walls covered with artwork, clearly created by the children who lived here. Wooden beams stretched overhead, strung with twinkling lights that gave the cavernous space an intimate feel. James designed it himself, Maggie explained as we entered. Said every family deserves a proper dinner table. A dozen round tables filled the space, each set with mismatched but clean plates and silverware. Residents were already gathering, adults helping children get settled, teenagers distributing water pitchers. The atmosphere was lively but organized, like a well-rehearsed dance where everyone knew their role. Michael, Jennifer, and I stood awkwardly just inside the entrance, outsiders in a place that bore our family name. David had yet to return from the stables. A tiny woman with snow-white hair approached us, leaning heavily on a cane. "You must be Eleanor," she said, her rheumatoid-twisted hands extending toward mine. "I'm Rose. James spoke of you constantly." I took her gnarled fingers gently. "You're Thomas's mother." "Yes," she smiled, revealing dimples that matched her son's. "And James's second cousin, though he didn't know that when he found us. Only discovered the connection when I mentioned my maiden name was Mitchell, from the Kentucky Mitchells. Not the Montana ones." I blinked in surprise. "James never told me. Probably thought it didn't matter. Family is who you choose, not just who shares your blood." She gestured toward a table near the fireplace. "That's our family table. James always sat there when he visited. Would you join me?" Before I could answer, Michael stepped forward. "Just Rose, dear." "Rose," he continued stiffly, "I understand you've lived here for some time, but you should know this property is being sold. Tomorrow." Rose's smile never faltered. "Is that so? Well, perhaps after dinner you'll feel differently. Food has a way of changing perspectives." She turned back to me. "James's chair has been empty 6 months now. Would do my heart good to see it filled again." I felt Jennifer stiffen beside me, preparing legal arguments against emotional manipulation. But Rose wasn't manipulating. She was grieving, just as I was. "I'd be honored," I told her, ignoring Michael's disapproving look. We followed Rose to the table where Thomas was already seated, animatedly telling a teenage girl about Ben's brother who could talk to horses. David appeared moments later, sliding into the chair beside Thomas, a soft smile playing on his lips, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since James's funeral. "The mare's name is Whisper," he told me as I sat down. "Rescued from an abusive racing stable. She's going to be okay with time and patience." "Time and patience," Rose echoed. "James's prescription for all wounds, animal or human." A bell rang softly, and the dining hall quieted. Maggie stood at the front, hands clasped. "As always, before we eat, we share our gratitudes. Tonight is special, as we welcome Dr. Mitchell's family." A murmur went through the room as heads turned toward us. "Eleanor, Michael, Jennifer, and David have come to learn about the ranch. Let's show them the same kindness James showed each of us." One by one, people around the room stood to share brief thanksgivings. A veteran with a prosthetic leg thanked the community for helping with his physical therapy. A young mother expressed gratitude for childcare that allowed her to attend online classes. A teenage boy awkwardly thanked his math tutor for helping him pass an exam. When they finished, Thomas jumped up excitedly. "I'm grateful Ben's mommy came to see us, and his brother can talk to Whisper." All eyes turned expectantly toward me. I hadn't prepared for this ritual, had no gratitude readily available amid the whirlwind of revelations. But looking around at these faces, people whose lives James had touched while I remained oblivious, I found words. I'm grateful to discover that while I was preserving Benjamin's memory by keeping it locked away, James was honoring it by creating this. My voice caught. "Thank you for showing me another way to remember my son." A soft murmur of approval rippled through the room. Even Jennifer looked moved, though she quickly masked it when she caught Michael watching her. Rose squeezed my hand as dinner was served family style. Hearty vegetable stew, fresh bread, and salad greens that Maggie informed us came from the greenhouse. The meal was simple but delicious, clearly prepared with care. As we ate, residents stopped by our table to introduce themselves. Robert Winters, the lawyer I'd met earlier, shared stories of the ranch's early days. A former teacher named Elena described the educational program for children who struggled in traditional schools. A quiet man named Sammy, who I learned had been an interpreter for American forces in Afghanistan, expressed his gratitude for the sanctuary provided to his family when their special visas left them homeless in America. James paid for our immigration lawyer, Sammy said softly. When the system failed us, he created a place for us to belong while we fought for legal status. Michael remained silent throughout these interactions, though I noticed him watching a young boy at the next table who was eagerly showing a drawing to his mother. A stick-figure family standing before a simple house, home, printed in wobbly letters above it. Jennifer, ever the attorney, asked pointed questions about the ranch's legal structure, funding mechanisms, and sustainability plans. Robert answered each inquiry with professional precision, occasionally referencing documents he promised to provide for her review. The mineral rights sale was legally structured as a charitable donation, he explained. The proceeds went directly into the trust's endowment fund, which is why it never appeared in personal accounts. Tax avoidance, Jennifer muttered. Tax planning, Robert corrected mildly. Perfectly legal and ethical. The IRS has audited the trust twice and found everything in order. David barely spoke, content to listen to Thomas's excited chatter about horses, swimming, and the art therapy classes he attended twice weekly. I watched my youngest son carefully. Of my 3 children, David had struggled most after Benjamin's death. Sleepwalking, nightmares, withdrawal. Just 7 when his brother drowned. He'd never fully processed the trauma. Now, watching him with Thomas, I glimpsed the healing that had eluded him. As dessert, Rose's famous apple pie was served. A young girl approached our table with a handmade card. Lucy, the redhead from the swimming lesson. I made this for you, she said shyly, placing it before me. Miss Maggie said you're sad because Dr. James went to heaven. The card featured a childish drawing of a smiling sun over a lake. Inside, in careful printing, when we are sad, Dr. James said to look for helpers. We can be your helpers now. Tears filled my eyes. James's favorite Mr. Rogers quote, "Look for the helpers," had become his life philosophy, it seemed. Thank you, Lucy, I managed. It's beautiful. As she skipped away, Michael finally broke his silence. This is all very touching, Mom, but these good works don't change the fact that Dad lied to us for decades, hid money, created this elaborate double life. While you were weekending in Aspen, David said suddenly, his voice unusually sharp. While Jennifer was climbing the corporate ladder, while I was in and out of rehab, Michael flushed. That's not fair. Isn't it? David challenged. When's the last time you asked Dad about his life? Not about investments or advice or loans? Just about him? An uncomfortable silence fell over our table. Rose patted my hand gently. Family, she said softly. Always the most complicated love story. As dinner concluded, residents began their evening routines. Some cleared tables, others supervised children's homework. Still others gathered for what appeared to be a support group meeting in a corner. Typical evening at Mitchell Ranch, Maggie explained as she joined us. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Everyone's needs are met according to their circumstances. Sounds like communism, Michael muttered. Sounds like family, I countered. And as I watched this community, these strangers united by James's vision, I realized they knew a side of my husband I'd never seen. While I'd been married to James Mitchell, family doctor and devoted husband, these people had known James Mitchell, visionary and savior. I wondered which version was more authentic, or if perhaps both were equally true. Night fell over the ranch, stars emerging in the vast Montana sky with a brilliance I'd forgotten existed in Denver's light-polluted suburbs. Maggie had offered us accommodations, Michael and Jennifer in guest rooms in the main house, David happily bunking in the stables at Thomas's insistent invitation, and me in James's quarters above his office. He kept a room here? I'd asked, surprised. For his longer visits, Maggie had explained. When he stayed several days to oversee construction projects or medical clinics, the space was undeniably James, Spartan but thoughtful in its details. A twin bed with the flannel sheets he preferred, bookshelves lined with medical journals and dog-eared westerns, a small desk beneath a window overlooking the property, and photographs, dozens of them, in simple frames covering one entire wall. I sat now on the edge of his bed, examining these snapshots of James's secret life. There he was with Robert, arms slung around each other's shoulders before a half-built cabin. James kneeling beside Thomas on a fishing dock. James in a Santa hat, distributing presents to beaming children. James beside a woman in a wheelchair, both grinning broadly as she held up a diploma. Not a single photograph of me or Michael, Jennifer, or David. Those lived in his Denver office, I realized. He had kept his worlds completely separate, not just for my protection, but perhaps for his own peace of mind. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Jennifer stood in the doorway, her professional demeanor slightly softened by exhaustion. "May I come in?" I nodded, patting the space beside me. She sat, her eyes immediately drawn to the photo wall. "It's surreal," she said after a moment, "like discovering Dad had another family." "He did, in a way," I acknowledged, "but not the kind you're thinking." "Greg's reviewed the trust documents," she continued, her lawyer's precision returning. "They're legitimate. Dad created an irrevocable charitable trust 15 years ago with the ranch as the primary asset. We can't sell it, Mom. Not without a protracted legal battle that we'd likely lose." I absorbed this information, surprised to find myself relieved rather than concerned. "What about the mineral rights offer?" "The trust owns those too, though there's a clause allowing limited extraction with environmental safeguards." She sighed. "Nothing like the scorched earth approach the mining company wants." "So, no $25 million windfall?" "No." She glanced sideways at me. "Michael's taking it hard. He's been counting on that money to expand his business." I thought of Michael's luxury home in Cherry Creek, his vacation property in Vail, his children in private schools. "He's done well enough without it." "We all have," Jennifer admitted. "Even David, when he's sober." We sat in companionable silence, studying the photographic evidence of James's parallel life. "Why didn't he tell us?" Jennifer finally asked, the lawyer facade cracking to reveal the hurt daughter beneath. "Did he think we wouldn't understand? That we'd try to stop him?" "I think," I said slowly, "he feared what knowing would do to me. And once that pattern of secrecy was established, it became easier to maintain than to break." "But all that money, Mom. $3 million that could have helped his own family." I gestured toward the photos. "These people became his family too, Jenny. Look at their faces. Really look." She studied the images more carefully, her expression softening. "They all look at him like he saved them," I finished. "Because he did." Another knock, and Michael appeared, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "Well, Jennifer's confirmed it. Dad screwed us all with his secret charity project." "Michael," I chided, "that's not fair." "Fair?" he scoffed. "What's not fair is discovering your father led a double life for 30 years. What's not fair is finding out the inheritance you counted on doesn't exist because he gave it all away to strangers." "They're not strangers to him," Jennifer said quietly, surprising me with her shift in perspective. "Look at these photos, Michael. Really look at them." "I don't care," he snapped. "He lied to us, Mom, for decades. How can you be so calm about this?" Before I could respond, David appeared behind Michael, his expression unusually serene. "Because she understands what you don't, Mike. Dad didn't do this against us. He did it for Ben." "Don't bring Benjamin into this," Michael warned, his voice dropping dangerously. "This has nothing to do with him." "It has everything to do with him," David insisted. "This whole place exists because of what happened to Ben. It's Dad's way of making something good come from something terrible." He stepped into the room, addressing me directly. "Maggie showed me the video, Mom. The one Dad made at the memorial." "What video?" I asked, though I remembered Maggie mentioning it earlier. "Dad recorded messages at Ben's memorial. For 30 years. On the anniversary." David's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Maggie says there's one he made specifically for you to see, when you were ready." Michael threw up his hands in disgust. "More manipulative theatrics." "It's not theatrics," David said firmly. "It's Dad talking to Mom, and I think she deserves to hear him out." Jennifer placed a gentle hand on my arm. "You don't have to watch it now, Mom, or ever if you don't want to." But I was already standing. "Where is it?" David led us downstairs to James's office, where Maggie waited, a tablet computer in her hands. "I wasn't sure if tonight was the right time," she said uncertainly. But when David asked, I want to see it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We'll give you privacy, Maggie suggested, but I shook my head. No, my children should see this too. I sat at James's desk, my surviving children gathering behind me as Maggie set up the tablet and discreetly left. The video began with James's face filling the screen. My husband, clearly in his final months, though I hadn't recognized his decline at the time. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 3 weeks before his death. Behind him stood Benjamin's memorial, flower-bedecked as always. "Ellie," he began, his familiar voice sending a shock through me. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you've found your way back to the ranch, back to this place." He gestured at the memorial behind him. "I've made hundreds of these videos over the years, talking to you, to Ben, trying to explain what I couldn't say in person. Maggie will give you access to them all if you want them. But this one's the truth I should have told you 30 years ago." James shifted, revealing more of the lake behind him. "Ellie girl, the day Ben drowned wasn't your fault. It was mine," I gasped, feeling my children tense behind me. "I know you've carried this guilt for decades," James continued, his eyes glistening, "believing that if you hadn't been preparing his surprise birthday cake, if you'd been watching him instead. But the truth is, I told him he could go to the lake that morning." My hands flew to my mouth. "He asked if he could try fishing with his new rod. I said yes, told him to stay on the dock. I promised I'd join him in 15 minutes after I fixed the tractor, but I got caught up in the repair, lost track of time. You were in the kitchen, thinking he was with me. I was in the barn, thinking he was still waiting for me." James wiped a tear. "By the time either of us realized he'd gone to the water alone," I felt Jennifer's hand on my shoulder, squeezing tightly. "I couldn't tell you then. You were so broken, Ellie, and I was a coward. Watching you blame yourself was easier than admitting I'd given permission. As the years passed, it became impossible to confess. How do you tell someone you've let them carry undeserved guilt for decades?" James took a deep breath, composing himself. "So instead, I tried to atone, to make Benjamin's death mean something. Every child taught to swim safely, every veteran given purpose, every family sheltered. They're all part of our son's legacy. The boy who loved everyone, who never met a stranger, who wanted to save every stray animal we found. He lives on in this place, Ellie, in ways I couldn't explain without revealing my own culpability." Behind me, Michael made a soft, wounded sound. "I don't know if you can forgive me," James continued, "for Benjamin, for the lies, for creating this place without you. But I hope someday you'll see that in my broken way, I was trying to honor both our son and you, the woman who taught me that love is about lifting others up." He leaned closer to the camera. "The trust will protect the ranch after I'm gone. The community can continue without me, but it would flourish with your heart guiding it, Ellie. If you can find it in yourself to forgive me, to embrace what grew from our greatest loss, there's room for you here. Room for all our family, if they choose it." James smiled sadly. "I've loved you completely, Eleanor Mitchell, even in my deception, and Benjamin would be so proud of the lives saved in his name." The screen went dark. For several heartbeats, none of us moved or spoke. Then Michael turned abruptly and left the room. Jennifer, tears streaming down her face, squeezed my shoulder once more before following him. David remained, his hand resting gently on my back as 30 years of misplaced guilt washed over me in waves of grief and revelation. "He knew," I whispered. "All these years, he knew I blamed myself, and he blamed himself," David said quietly. "So he built all this to make amends." I looked up at my youngest son, suddenly seeing him with new clarity. "You're not angry about the money." David shook his head. "I never cared about that. And after seeing this place, understanding what Dad created, I'm proud of him, Mom. For the first time since Ben died, I feel like our family did something that matters." As the night deepened around the ranch, Benjamin's ranch, James's vision, I began to understand the legacy my husband had left, not just for strangers, but for us. A way to transform our family's greatest tragedy into purpose. If only I could find the strength to accept it. Dawn broke over the ranch with a spectacular riot of colors, purples and oranges streaking across the vast Montana sky. I'd barely slept, spending hours reading through James's journals after watching his confession video. Each entry revealed another piece of the intricate mosaic he'd created in our son's memory. I stood now on the porch of the main house, coffee mug warming my hands, watching the ranch come alive. Veterans headed to the greenhouse, children gathered for breakfast before school. A group of women left for their jobs in nearby towns, carpooling in one of the ranch's vehicles. This well-oiled community had functioned without me, without my knowledge, for decades. "Early riser like your husband," came Rose's voice as she joined me, moving slowly with her cane. James always said sunrise over the mountains was God's daily reminder that beauty follows darkness. "That sounds like him," I agreed, making room for her on the bench. "He was always the optimist in our marriage. Yet he carried such guilt," Rose said softly. "Sometimes when he thought no one was watching, the weight of it showed in his eyes." "I never saw it," I admitted. "How did I not see it?" "Because he didn't want you to." Rose patted my hand. James was skilled at compartmentalizing. Doctor mode, husband mode, ranch mode, each separate and distinct. 3 decades of deception, I mused. "I keep trying to be angry, but all I feel is grief," Rose supplied. "For the shared healing you might have had, for the years you could have been part of this." A small figure bounded across the yard, Thomas, heading for the stables where David had spent the night. My youngest son emerged, hair tousled from sleep, smiling at Thomas's enthusiasm. "Your son belongs here," Rose said, following my gaze. "I've never seen Thomas connect with someone so quickly. Not since James." I thought of David's struggles over the years, the rehab stints, the depression, the difficulty maintaining relationships. David has always been searching for something. Purpose, maybe. "We have that in abundance here," Rose replied. "What we lack are enough hands to share the load." Before I could respond, Michael's BMW pulled into the yard. He'd left last night after the video, driving to a hotel in the nearest town. Now he returned, his expression unreadable as he approached the porch. "Morning," he said stiffly. "Jennifer's on her way. We need to talk, Mom." Rose took the hint, rising slowly. "I'll leave you to your family business, but Eleanor, when you're ready, Maggie has something for you in James's office." After she left, Michael sat beside me, exhaling heavily. "I didn't sleep last night." "Neither did I admitted. "I kept thinking about Dad's video, about Benjamin, about all of this." He gestured vaguely toward the bustling ranch. "I was 12 when Ben died. Old enough to understand, but too young to process it properly. I remember deciding someone had to be the strong one for you and Dad." "You were," I said softly. "So responsible, so adult-like overnight." "I resented it," he confessed. "Resented losing both Ben and my childhood in one day. Resented Dad for falling apart when I needed him most." I'd never heard Michael speak this way. My eldest had always been the practical one, the unemotional one, the successful one who never looked back. "And then last night," he continued, "watching Dad confess, seeing his guilt, his pain, it was like meeting a stranger. The father I knew would never have kept such secrets." "None of us knew him completely," I said. "Not even me." Michael's jaw tightened. "The money still bothers me, Mom. $3 million given to strangers while his own family struggled. Jennifer's medical debt after Greg's layoff, David's rehab costs, my business expansion loans. We weren't struggling, Michael," I corrected gently. "We were comfortable, privileged even. These people had nothing. They're not our responsibility. They were to James. And maybe that's what family really means, extending responsibility beyond blood." I studied my son's face, seeing the boy he'd been beneath the successful businessman he'd become. "Your father built something remarkable here, Michael, something that honors Benjamin in ways I never could." Michael looked away, watching as David and Thomas led horses from the stable. "Dad's video mentioned there being room for all our family here. What did he mean by that?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I intend to find out." Jennifer's car arrived, parking beside Michael's. She emerged with her husband Greg, both looking solemn. "We need to discuss the legal implications," she said without preamble as they joined us. "The trust is valid, but there may be ways to restructure it that benefit both the ranch and our family." "Always the lawyer," Michael muttered. "Someone has to be practical," she retorted. $25 million is still on the table from the mining company. If we can negotiate limited extraction rights that don't displace residents— "No," I interrupted, surprising myself with my certainty. "No mining. Not yet. Not until I understand everything James built here." Greg cleared his throat. "Mrs. Mitchell, with all due respect, the offer won't stay open indefinitely. The company has other options." "Then let them pursue those options," I said firmly. This land was Benjamin's playground, James's sanctuary, and now home to dozens who have nowhere else. I won't rush into decisions that destroy any of that. Jennifer and Greg exchanged glances, clearly having expected a different response. Maggie wants to see me, I continued, standing. Something James left. Will you join me? We found Maggie in James's office, a worn leather box on the desk before her. These are the letters, she said simply. One for each month for 30 years. James wrote them after every visit but never sent them. 360 letters, Jennifer calculated aloud. 372, Maggie corrected. He was very disciplined. I approached the box reverently, lifting the lid to reveal bundles of envelopes, each tied with string and labeled by year. Have you read them? I asked Maggie. No, she replied. They were for you alone. James was very clear about that. I selected the earliest bundle from the year after Benjamin died. The first envelope was addressed in James's familiar handwriting. For Ellie, when you're ready to know. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read aloud. My dearest Ellie, I've just spent my first weekend back at the ranch since we left. I told you I was at a medical conference in Portland. Forgive the deception. I couldn't sell this place, Ellie. Not where Ben's spirit still feels so present. The lake haunts me as it does you, but somehow being here, facing it directly, brings a strange peace that eludes me in Denver. Today, I repaired the dock where he used to fish. Tomorrow, I'll clear the path to the meadow where he flew his kite. Small acts of remembrance that feel like prayer. A local veteran, Robert Winters, has been sleeping in our barn. Instead of calling the sheriff, I've invited him to stay, to help with repairs. He has the same hollow look we do, Ellie. The look of someone who has lost something irreplaceable. Perhaps that's why I let him stay, because he understands that some wounds never fully heal, they just become part of who you are. I want to tell you about this place, about how it feels both haunted and healing. But when I called home tonight and heard the lightness in your voice as you described your new teaching position, I couldn't bear to reopen wounds that are finally beginning to scab over. So I carry this secret for now, this small solace that helps me breathe when grief threatens to suffocate me. Perhaps someday we can share it. Until then, know that in this place where we lost our son, I am keeping his memory alive in the only way I know how, by helping others who are lost themselves. All my love, James. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. Michael stood rigid, his expression conflicted. Jennifer wiped her eyes discreetly. Greg studied the floor, an outsider witnessing our family's raw exposure. There are hundreds more, Maggie said softly. Documenting everything, the first veterans cabin, the greenhouse installation, the swimming program, Thomas and Rose's arrival, the trust formation. James recorded it all for you. He wanted me to know, I realized, just not until he thought I could bear it, or until he was gone and couldn't witness your pain, Michael suggested, his voice rougher than usual. Either way, Jennifer said, he left us a roadmap to his heart, to the life he led without us. I replaced the letter in its envelope, overcome by the magnitude of what lay before me. Hundreds of confessions, explanations, invitations to understand the husband I thought I'd known completely. There's more, Maggie said hesitantly. James left instructions for all of you. If you chose to embrace the ranch, what kind of instructions? Jennifer asked, lawyer mode engaging. Opportunities, Maggie clarified. Ways each of you could be involved in the ranch's future if you wanted to be. He never assumed you would, but he hoped. I thought of James's words in the video. There's room for all our family here, if they choose it. Show us, I said. As Maggie retrieved another folder from James's desk, I caught David watching from the doorway, Thomas beside him. My youngest son's expression held something I hadn't seen in years, hope. And in that moment, I began to understand what James had always known. That healing doesn't come from running away from tragedy, but from transforming it into purpose. The question was whether our fractured family could find unity in continuing what James had begun, or whether his dual life would ultimately drive us further apart. Maggie opened the folder and removed several documents, each bearing one of our names. James prepared these during his final months, when his heart condition was worsening. He never told anyone about his diagnosis, not even me until the very end. Another secret. How many had my husband carried to protect those he loved? He called these his legacy proposals, Maggie continued, handing each of us our designated envelope. Mine was thicker than the others, its weight significant in my trembling hands. Michael tore his open immediately, scanning the contents with narrowed eyes. Jennifer, ever the methodical one, carefully slid a finger beneath the flap, preserving the envelope as potential evidence. David accepted his with reverence, but made no move to open it, watching his siblings' reactions instead. I broke the seal on mine, finding several pages covered in James's precise handwriting. The first page began simply, "Dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, you've discovered Mitchell Ranch and all it encompasses. You've learned of my 3-decade deception, or dedication, depending on your perspective. The question now is, what happens next? I've established legal protections for this community through the trust, ensuring it can continue without us. But it would thrive with Mitchell family involvement, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The choice to transform our family's greatest tragedy into its most meaningful legacy. For you, my beloved wife, I propose the role you were always meant for, community historian and heartkeeper. Your gift as a history teacher, your ability to help others connect to the past while building toward the future. These talents are desperately needed here. The children need to understand where they came from to see where they might go. The veterans need their stories preserved with dignity. And Benjamin's memory needs to be woven throughout, not as a ghost that haunts, but as the foundation that supports. Should you accept, the trust provides a modest salary and living quarters, our old home, restored to comfort but preserved in essence. More importantly, it offers purpose for your retirement years and healing for your heart. The decision is entirely yours. You may choose to visit occasionally, to remain at a distance, or to embrace this place fully. All I ask is that you consider the possibility that in running from this land for 30 years, you may have been running from your own healing. With eternal love, James' additional pages detailed practical matters, financial provisions, transitional assistance, even curriculum suggestions for historical programming. James had thought of everything, planning for a future he wouldn't live to see. I looked up to find Michael standing abruptly, his proposal crumpled in his fist. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "What did yours say?" Jennifer asked, her own pages held protectively against her chest. Michael laughed bitterly. "Dad wants me to use my business acumen to establish sustainable revenue streams for the ranch. Suggested I relocate my investment firm's satellite office to Billings and serve as the trust's financial advisor. Even outlined expansion opportunities for ecotourism and therapeutic retreat services that could benefit both the community and provide professional fulfillment." "He thought that far ahead?" Jennifer seemed impressed despite herself. "Oh, it gets better," Michael continued. "He's offering matching funds from the trust for any investment I make in ranch enterprises. A partnership, he calls it, as if I'd uproot my entire life to manage his secret charity project." The bitterness in his voice didn't quite mask the underlying hurt. The son who'd built his own success, feeling his father had been planning a different future for him all along. "What about yours?" I asked Jennifer gently. She swallowed hard. "Legal oversight. Dad suggests I establish a nonprofit law practice specializing in veterans' benefits, immigrant rights, and domestic violence protection, all issues affecting ranch residents. He's arranged for mentorship with Robert and connections to advocacy organizations in Billings." Her voice softened. "He writes that my passion for justice has always outweighed my desire for corporate success, even when you couldn't admit it to yourself." I saw the conflict in her eyes. The ambitious attorney who'd fought for partnership at her prestigious firm suddenly confronted with an alternate vision of her professional identity. "David?" I prompted, noticing my youngest still clutching his unopened envelope. He shook his head. "I don't need to read it. I already know." "Know what?" Michael demanded. "That Dad saw me clearly when the rest of you saw only my failures." David's voice held no accusation, just simple truth, that he understood why I kept falling apart in the structured world you all navigated so easily. "You don't know what he proposed," Jennifer pointed out. "Something with the horses," David said confidently. "Something that uses my empathy rather than treating it as a weakness. Something that acknowledges I've been looking for purpose since Ben died." Maggie nodded slightly, confirming David's intuition without revealing specifics. Michael paced the small office, agitation evident in every movement. "This is emotional manipulation from beyond the grave. Dad spent 30 years living a double life, and now he expects us to abandon our existing lives to continue his secret project? I have a family in Denver, a successful business, kids in schools they love. He doesn't expect anything, I corrected gently. He's offering possibilities, while leveraging guilt and sentimentality, Michael retorted. Classic dad, making emotional appeals seem like rational choices. Jennifer studied her pages thoughtfully. The proposals are surprisingly practical, though. Dad researched the legal barriers to what he's suggesting for me. He's included contact information for organizations already interested in partnership. It's thorough. Of course it is, Michael scoffed. Dad had 30 years to plan how to rope us into this place after he was gone. Or 30 years to understand what might bring each of us fulfillment, David suggested quietly. Fulfillment we haven't found in the lives we've built. Michael rounded on him. Speak for yourself. Some of us are perfectly fulfilled. Are you, Mike? David challenged, unusual confidence in his voice. Is that why you work 70 hours a week? Why you've been divorced twice? Why Tyler barely speaks to you, despite living in your house? You little... Michael began, stepping toward David. That's enough, I interjected, standing between my sons. James gave us choices, not mandates. We each decide for ourselves. Including you, Mom? Jennifer asked, her lawyer's perception homing in on my evasion. Have you decided? All eyes turned to me. My children, Maggie, even Greg, who had remained a respectful observer to our family drama. I've spent 30 years running from this place, I said slowly, finding my way to truth with each word, refusing to speak Benjamin's name, keeping his room like a museum, flinching when James mentioned Montana. I took a deep breath, and none of it brought healing. None of it honored our son's life or made sense of his death. I gestured toward the window, where ranch residents went about their morning routines. But this community has saved lives, given hope, created family for those without one, all in Benjamin's name. So you're staying, Michael concluded flatly. I'm considering it, I corrected. I want to read all James's letters first, understand everything he built here, then decide. And if we don't want to be part of this grand vision, Michael pressed, then that's your choice, I replied simply. James protected the ranch legally, regardless of our involvement. This place will continue with or without Mitchell family participation. The tension in the room was broken by Thomas appearing in the doorway. David! The new horse is eating! You said you'd help brush her! David smiled, tucking his still unopened envelope into his pocket. Coming, Thomas. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm staying. At least for a while. The rest of you can do whatever you want with Dad's proposals, but I've found something here I've been searching for my whole adult life. After he left, Michael shook his head in frustration. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Dad's created some fantasy world here that's sucking us in one by one. Or perhaps, Jennifer suggested cautiously, he created something real in a world that often feels like fantasy. You two? Michael looked betrayed. What happened to your partnership track? The Supreme Court ambitions? Jennifer shrugged, a gesture so unlike my always certain daughter that it momentarily stunned me. I don't know, Michael, but I do know I haven't been happy despite achieving everything I thought I wanted. Maybe Dad saw that when I couldn't. This is insane, Michael muttered. We're supposed to have careers and lives in Denver, not run off to play charity workers on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Your father commuted for 30 years, Maggie observed quietly. Created impact in both worlds. Perhaps such balance is possible for all of you. Michael stormed out, Greg following after an apologetic glance toward Jennifer. My daughter stayed, studying her father's proposal with new eyes. He knew me better than I thought, she admitted softly. How did he see what I've only recently begun to acknowledge to myself? Your father had a gift for seeing beneath surfaces, I replied, even while keeping his own depths hidden. Outside, I could see David with Thomas by the stables, Michael standing by his car with a phone pressed to his ear, and the daily life of Mitchell Ranch continuing around them. Lives James had saved, futures he had altered, all flowing from the devastating loss that had nearly destroyed our family. And for the first time in 30 years, I allowed myself to wonder if Benjamin's death, while never making sense, might yet have meaning through this unexpected legacy. A week passed at Mitchell Ranch, the longest I'd stayed in Montana since Benjamin's death. Each day brought new revelations as I immersed myself in James's hidden world. I read his letters chronologically, a dozen each evening, watching through his words as the community evolved from one homeless veteran to the thriving sanctuary it had become. I toured every facility with Maggie, The schoolhouse where children who'd struggled in traditional education thrived under individualized attention. The workshop where veterans crafted furniture that generated income for the ranch. The medical clinic staffed by volunteer doctors from Billings. And the therapeutic riding center where traumatized children connected with rescued horses. The swimming program by the lake became my daily ritual. Sitting on the memorial bench, watching instructors teach water safety with meticulous care. 47 children had learned to swim here. 47 lives potentially saved from Benjamin's fate. My own children responded differently to James's legacy proposals. Michael returned to Denver after 2 days, citing pressing business matters but promising to consider options. His parting words, "Don't make any permanent decisions yet, Mom," carried both concern and caution. Jennifer took a 2-week leave from her law firm, spending hours with Robert Winters reviewing the ranch's legal challenges, immigration cases, veterans' benefits appeals, custody issues for women fleeing abuse. She worked with quiet intensity, asking occasional questions but keeping her thoughts private. David never left. He moved into a small cabin near the stables, spending his days working with the horses and his evenings in long conversations with Thomas and the veterans. I'd never seen my youngest son so centered, so purposeful. The restlessness that had defined him seemed to evaporate in the Montana air. On my 7th morning, I awoke early and walked alone to Benjamin's memorial. The rising sun cast long shadows across the lake that had taken my son and transformed my husband. Decades of grief and secrets had flowed from this place, yet somehow hope had emerged as well. "I thought I might find you here," came a voice behind me. Rose approached slowly with her cane, Thomas following with a bouquet of wildflowers. "Tuesday flowers for Ben," Thomas explained, carefully arranging them at the memorial. Rose eased herself onto the bench beside me. "James came here every morning too, said it helped him start the day with purpose, remembering why all this exists." I watched Thomas whispering to the memorial, having some private conversation with the boy he'd never met, but somehow knew through James's stories. "He kept Benjamin alive here," I said softly, "while I was keeping him dead in Denver." "Different ways of grieving," Rose corrected. "Neither right nor wrong. But James's way helped others, created this." I gestured toward the ranch visible through the trees. "My way helped no one, not even me. Yet here you are now," Rose observed. "That's what matters." Thomas finished his flower arrangement and wandered toward the lake's edge, giving us privacy while remaining within sight. "I've been reading James's letters," I told her. "One struck me particularly, from about 5 years ago. He described watching you and Thomas at the 4th of July celebration. Thomas was helping younger children with sparklers, so careful, so protective. James wrote that it reminded him of Benjamin with his younger siblings." Rose smiled. "James often said Thomas and Benjamin would have been soul brothers, both so gentle, so aware of others' feelings. In that letter, James wondered if I would ever meet Thomas, if I would see what he saw, Benjamin's spirit living on in this community." I took a deep breath. "He wrote that his greatest regret was building all this without me." "It was," Rose confirmed. "He told me once that success felt hollow without you to share it, that saving strangers couldn't compensate for the distance growing between him and his own family. Yet he never told us. Fear is powerful," Rose said simply. "Once he'd established the pattern of secrecy, breaking it became more terrifying with each passing year." We sat in companionable silence, watching Thomas skip stones across the lake's surface, no fear of the water that had claimed Benjamin, just respectful caution instilled by James's swimming program. "I've made my decision," I said finally. Rose nodded, unsurprised. "I thought today might be the day. How did you know?" "You have James's look, the one he got when his mind was settled." She patted my hand. "Whatever you've decided, he would respect it." "I'm staying," I said, the words bringing immediate lightness. "Not visiting, not observing, staying, making this place my home." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "James would be so grateful. I need to honor what he built here, what Benjamin inspired." I watched Thomas wave excitedly as David emerged from the tree line, heading toward the stables. "And I need to support David's healing. He's found himself here in ways I never thought possible." "And your other children?" "They'll make their own choices." Jennifer seems drawn to the legal work, though she hasn't committed yet. "Michael," I sighed. "Michael is struggling the most with all this, but I have to respect his journey, whatever direction it takes." "Family is complicated," Rose acknowledged. especially when secrets are suddenly revealed. I've spent 30 years running from this place, I said, trying to outpace grief that always caught me anyway. James found another path, using grief as fuel for something beautiful. I want to follow that path now, however late my start. It's never too late for new beginnings, Rose assured me. James believed that with his whole heart. Later that morning, I gathered my 3 children in James's office. Jennifer had just returned from observing Veterans Court in Billings. Michael had flown in from Denver, his expression guarded. David arrived last, horsehair clinging to his jeans and a new confidence in his bearing. I've made my decision, I announced without preamble. I'm moving to the ranch permanently. I'll be taking the position James outlined for me, community historian and heartkeeper. Michael's face tightened, though he said nothing. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. David broke into a broad smile. I'm not asking any of you to follow my choice, I continued. James gave each of us separate proposals because he understood we're different people with different needs. All I ask is that you respect my decision as I'll respect yours. I've decided too, David said, excitement barely contained. I'm accepting Dad's proposal, equine therapy program director. I'll be working with veterans and children using horses as therapeutic partners. And your apartment in Denver? Michael asked. Your job at the music store? David shrugged. Already gave notice on both. Nothing there was permanent anyway. Jennifer? I prompted. My daughter straightened, lawyer mode engaging. I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence from the firm. A sabbatical to establish the legal aid clinic Dad proposed. After that, she shrugged, an uncharacteristic gesture of uncertainty from my always decisive daughter. We'll see. All eyes turned to Michael, who stood with arms crossed defensively. I can't uproot my family for this fantasy. My business is in Denver. My children are in schools they love. My wife has her own career. No one's asking you to uproot anything, I said gently. James's proposal for you involved occasional consultation, strategic planning, presence, not residence. And what happens to the $25 million from the mining company? Just left on the table? His voice held both frustration and genuine confusion. My practical son struggling to reconcile emotional value with financial reality. The offer will keep, Jennifer interjected, and there are other options for responsible resource development that wouldn't destroy the community. I've been researching alternatives this week. Michael looked around at our faces, his mother and siblings united in a vision he couldn't yet share. I need time, he finally said. This is all happening too fast. Take all the time you need, I assured him. This place isn't going anywhere. Neither are we. That evening, as sunset painted the Montana sky in spectacular hues, I stood on the porch of what would soon be my home again. Ranch residents gathered for their weekly community dinner in the converted barn. I could see David helping Thomas carry platters of food, Jennifer deep in conversation with Robert, and even Michael cautiously joining a group of veterans examining plans for a new workshop. The memorial bell rang softly, the signal for gathering. As if by magnetic pull, my family found each other in the crowd, walking together toward the dining hall. Not perfect, not completely healed, but moving in the same direction for the first time since Benjamin's death. Behind us, the lake gleamed golden in the setting sun, no longer just the place that took my son, but the place where his legacy lived on in every child who learned to swim, every veteran who found purpose, every family given shelter. James had been right all along. The only way past grief was through it, not around it as I'd tried for 30 years, but straight through its heart to find meaning on the other side. At the entrance to the dining hall, I paused before Benjamin's photograph, placed prominently beside James's on what residents called the Founder's Wall. My son and husband, forever linked in this community they'd created, one through his tragic absence, the other through his determined presence. We found our way home, Ben, I whispered, touching his image gently. Both of us, finally. And for the first time in 30 years, saying my son's name brought not just pain, but pride. Pride in the legacy that had grown from our deepest loss, a legacy I would now help nurture into its next chapter. As Rose would say, the impossible mathematics of grace.